you want to have the ability to drop lots of clues, and some of those clues might be for things way up here that the players don't have any context for yet. That's great. That gives them things to investigate and ask about. Hey, Gravital, how do you go about planning a large campaign? Okay, how do we go about planning a large campaign? Here's what I do. Um, you need a big idea. This big idea can be just about anything. Um, it needs to be simple to understand. It needs to have depth. It needs to be stuff that you can dig into. But probably most importantly, you need something that you want to spend a lot of time thinking about. This big idea is going to drive so much of the campaign, and you're going to be driving to it, away from it, through it for the whole campaign. So you want that to be strong. I don't think my big idea was very strong in the first kind of group campaign that I ran, mostly just because I didn't know any better. The second campaign that I ran, I was a lot more deliberate about this. And we're still getting to the big idea, but the version of the big idea that they have right now is that their guild was secretly being run by a lich. This lich made deals in this region, in this world, to sort of protect everybody through horrible means. That was sort of the big idea, was what if somebody made a horrible choice and is sort of the bad guy, but they're keeping back other bad guys. My miniseries, my seafaring island campaign that I'm working on, that's going to be just 6 to 10 episodes. I call it 6 to 10 sessions long. That big idea is really driven around, can the party be sort of taken to a place where they have a compelling moral choice to make at the end of just a handful of sessions. So some big idea that you care enough about that you want to keep. Okay, blah blah blah. You get the idea. Then you want to break this down. So let's just say, over here you have, like, this is the truest form of the threat. This is where you have, like I mentioned, like, this is where you have the lich. This is where you have the dragons. This is where you have the the rift opens to hell or something. This is the biggest. This is the big threat that's over everything. This is connected to the big idea. Maybe it is the big idea, but this is where that goes. But you can't really do anything with that. Like, you can eventually do something to that once you have 15th level amazing party, and they're like, let's go fight a lich. But at level 1, and as you're planning and everybody's getting started, even at level 3 or level 5, level 8, like, these are probably not things that you can actually tackle. So you take these big ideas and then you start to break them down. And that first sort of step down, I think, is, how does this, whatever this is, how has it affected the world? The game world that you have, big or small. Campaigns can take place. The world could be, I'm making a one shot that's the cottage. The world of this one shot is that cottage. The world could also be the entirety. But the point is, from end to end, whatever the boundary lines of your campaign world are, this big idea, this big threat has changed it. And it should have changed it in some way that, like, how is your world now different than it was before? How is it going to continue to change? And how does this make your world different than any other world that somebody could play in? And how the lich, how the dragons, how the rift opening to hell, it's gonna flavor a lot about your campaign. And then you go another level deeper. And this one is more of a regional question. How does it affect the region, specifically the region, um, and I would say the region where the party is. This is now where it's getting more real. So we've got this overall threat, and it's changed the world, specifically in the party's neck of the woods. How is it affected? Uh, if we say that the dragons have made it so that the world, has made forces, let's say, specifically to fend off these dragons because these attacks are happening more frequently. Well, maybe that means that in the region that the players are from, they've recently started recruiting at young ages, younger than maybe most people are comfortable with, and that's become a tension between sort of like the kingdom, the royal, the officials, whatever they are in your world, and basically the towns. And everybody's, maybe people are hiding, right? Because they don't want to be recruited to be trained and fighting off dragons. And from there, it's usually going to, I think, I'll break it down into in the region. These are factions. And to use this kind of dragon fighting recruitment idea, probably the guilds are going to react one way. Probably certain barons or mayors or however your world is structured, they're going to react another way. Each one of these groups is going to react to kind of this trickling down problem in a different way. And of course, the party's right in the thick of it. And then the faction's response to the regional problem, which is reflective of the big world problem, which is reflective of the big ideas. We've gotten really small here. Like I said, maybe it's a guild, officials, maybe it's the temples, the priests, and probably, cultists, right? How are people going to be taking advantage of the situation? How can people profit? What are the horrible things that would allow evil groups to get by? What would the maybe the dark elves or the hobgoblins or the goblins or kobolds, or maybe there's a faction of giants, like how might all these groups respond to the regional changes? And then we are ready to actually look at the town, the starting town, wherever the party happens to be, whatever kicks things off for them. Given all of this, if to have thought through all of this down to here, which doesn't have to mean a lot. You can just make a little map like this and jot down ideas. By the time you get here, now the question is, okay, what is the smallest version of all of this that the party can feel, right? So, what is the tiniest, like the tiniest little impact that they can feel? If we talk about, maybe the guild is making money because there's certain guilds that are, the darker, less charming ones are actually selling people to the kingdom to fulfill the recruitment needs to go fight dragons, right? So for the party, maybe somebody that the party knows, or the bounty, or there's a big hubbub in town because somebody's gone missing. Maybe some people have been kidnapped, right? Or maybe somebody has run off to go find people that are being kidnapped, and that's caused drama. What you've got there now is like your first session, the first sort of inciting idea. It shouldn't be big and overblown. It should be really simple and easy to understand. Help the shopkeep's son or daughter or both have gone missing. Last we saw them, it was down by the river. Maybe they were swept away, but that wouldn't make any sense. They're great swimmers and they knew to come back, but also we found this, and it's some sort of like, uh, uh, you know, the sheath, like some sort of goblin little sheath you can tell from the markings, and turns out that they're doing capturing for. So now we can stair step it back up. So then the party is going to solve this, and when the party solves this smallest version problem, it should really only take a session or two for them to find and save, let's say, these people who've gone missing, to solve whatever tiny little problem it is. Well, then in solving that, they might find out through the course of resolving that issue that, well, these goblins weren't working alone. It turns out these goblins were working for one of these factions. The factions probably aren't goblins. The factions probably are keeping their hands clean. And maybe it's going to take a little adventure or two for them to figure out exactly who that faction is. Well, why is that faction doing the things that it's doing? Well, they're making hard decisions and they're fighting with these other factions. Maybe the party has to choose who they're going to align with, because they're all trying to deal with this larger issue of what's going on regionally. And then that expands into the world and back to, ultimately, thanks to this stuff that they dealt with at the beginning, if the party wants to really solve any of these problems, they're ultimately going to find themselves dealing with this bigger threat. That's kind of an outline, I guess, or that's kind of an approach to building an outline, I think. Hey, T. Yeah, I've drawn something like this a few times. One of these times I'll get it perfect, but it's getting there. It's also really fun if you can manage to have the tiny version rhyme with the big version, but that's unnecessary. Yeah, I mean, you can grow and shrink this, and you can sort of create, in a sense, like the goblins that you face in the first session are going to reflect somewhat onto who they work for. Well, who they work for might seem kind of like goblins compared to who they're working for. And you go up and you go up and you up. Like, those parallels could be fun to play with. Liking blueprints, how each clue the players find. Yes. You want to have the ability to drop lots of clues. And some of those clues might be for things way up here that the players don't have any context for yet. That's great. That gives them things to investigate and ask about. And ideally, the big idea, how do you deal with a lich? Maybe that's a little bit clearer. How do you deal with the threat of dragons? That gets a little bit, fuzzier. Certainly the rift opening to hell. For all of these types of big idea problems, you want the solutions that the world is grappling with to be fuzzy and gray enough that the party can actually make some, I think, interesting choices. Who would they align with? Are we eradicating dragons? Or are we going to try to make peace with them? Or maybe we just need to get them to sleep for another 1,000 years and future generations can deal with it. This is a version of the method that I've been using. Now, granted, I've taken it all with a grain of salt. I've only done a couple of campaigns. But this is the way that I think about it in terms of how I would go about planning it. But keep in mind that first session is really all that counts. All of this other stuff can be really kind of broad and vague and unclear. Just focus on making that first session really fun. And then maybe a couple sessions after that, and by then you're off to the races. And then you can respond to what the party is interested in and excited in. And then you'll have a whole new set of questions to ask that are probably even harder to answer.